Okay, well, while we're waiting for some more to join in, the numbers are coming through thick and fast. So probably worthwhile just sharing where you're logging in from this morning. And we've got people in from all across Australia, New Zealand, and whoever knows where else. So it'd be really good to hear where you're logging in from. And also, what's top of mind? What's going on in your world, in your mind? For me, I'm from Perth, Western Australia. Nice sunny day, so looking forward to the beach walk a little bit later on. So that's kind of top of mind, beginning of day, to see what the end's going to look like. So what's going on in your mind and where you're logging in from? We've got people in from Newcastle, Sydney, Byron, Hinterland, Brisbane, cloudy Newcastle. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Gold Coast, Melbourne, chilling day in Newcastle. I like that. Yeah, it's quite amazing how technology brings people together, even more so since the pandemic. We've got so used to connecting a lot more. Technology was available before, but people were a little bit less likely to use it, and now it's like second nature. Let's get onto Zoom. Although you can't quite meet the face-to-face meetings, because we are social animals and we like that face-to-face connection. So kind of works. Yeah.
And our thoughts definitely go out to those of you impacted by the second round of floods. Seeing that there's some of you from Byron, hearts go out to everyone impacted in that part of the world. I'm from Newcastle, and even though it is very wet, we haven't had nearly the amount of problems in the rain that some of you have further up the East Coast. So yeah, hope everyone's doing okay.
Yeah, it's pretty sad. We've got all these natural things happening which kind of disrupt our life in a pretty horrific way. And we can see communities kind of coming together and supporting each other. But when it happens twice, like in a short space of time, the bandwidth someone has to get through this gets kind of eroded. So they need even more support, mental and physical. So yeah, absolutely thoughts going out to those people. Okay, the numbers are creeping up nicely. Maybe we'll give it another minute or so, and then we'll kick off. We've got Perth, Melbourne, Newcastle. Okay, that's
perhaps
pretty good.
Perhaps one more contribution before we get started, while we're waiting for a few others, is how are you feeling about things right now? You know, generally, you know, are you heading into the rest of this year, you know, optimistic or pessimistic, or is there any sort of emotional one-word response to how you're feeling right now about the year and the year ahead? Mine would be two words. Mine would be cautiously optimistic. What have we got there? Turbulent. Yeah. Yes, indeed. Racing by. Yeah, isn't it what? Almost through the first quarter and into April. It's hard to believe.
Yeah, the pace which time is going at, it just feels it's faster and faster as the years have gone by. And there was a thought shared by the futurist from Telstra just before the pandemic, and he talked about the pace of change in the business world over the next 3 years equivalent to the last 100, and that's, you can feel that kind of creating a feeling in our businesses as well, because if you've got this pace of change, then you've got this turbulence going on in your mind as well. So it's quite interesting how it's all coming together. racing by, someone said, "Yeah, that's it." Yeah, I think we'll make a start now, and we're good to go. So, welcome to our Magic Numbers workshop. Why are we here today? To share some ideas to make your business perform better. Pretty much that. I'm Rupen Kotecha, the CEO of CFO Centre here in WA, and co-hosting with me today is David King, CEO of CFO Centre Eastern Australia and New Zealand. CFO Centre provides 2 small and medium businesses. We provide CFOs, chief financial officers, on a part-time basis. So these are businesses who are not big enough to afford a full-time CFO, and it's about helping them fast-track their growth from a commercial strategic perspective. We have a national team here in Australia and New Zealand, just across over 50 people, and globally over 700. So it's a pretty strong team working together with each other as well. So what you'll discover in today's session is firstly the 6 forgotten levers which you can pull to increase profit, cash, and business value. Really important. Those are kind of things. It's not just about selling a product or a service. But how can you impact your business in terms of profit and cash results? By doing little things. And as we go through the session today, we'll give you some tools which you can implement straight away, not just about theory, but turning it into practice and practical application. And we'll finish up with a case study of one of our clients that increased their cash flow by 3 million, their profit by 2 million, and their business value by 10 million, just by tweaking 3 of these 7 levers we're going to talk about a little bit later today. And so we're going to look at a smarter way to run your business, a more intelligent way to reverse engineer your business to give you the outcomes you really want. You know, we leave, a lot of us have left corporate life and thinking, you know, business is the way to go. And then sometimes we forget because we get so busy, we're going to bring it back to this stuff. Over to you, David.
Thanks a lot, Rupen, and welcome everybody. Thanks so much for jumping on today. What we want to do, and this is where great minds obviously think alike, because one of our attendees in the chat box, John, has suggested that we could use a poll to gauge some feedback, and that's exactly what we've got here first up. And the question is, what do you want your business to do for you right now? And it's an interesting question, one that we've posed to lots of clients and business owners along the way. And there are some options from which you can select. We'd like you to select the 2 most important things that jump out to you in respect to that question. So top 2, it's not an exhaustive list, but it's common answers we get from clients when we ask this question. So please fire away. Answers are coming in thick and fast. We've in the lead at the moment is improving your business profitability. Also rating well is scale faster or growth, as is improving cash flow. We'll just give it a bit longer. Wonderful. Well, the results of that, improving business profitability has come out on top with 65% of the vote. scaling faster came in second, and closely followed by improving cash flow. So that's interesting in that maybe why you're on this webinar today is that this webinar is very much about practical things that you can take away to improve profitability immediately in your business and also improve cash flow, which actually allows you then to grow and to scale if you get those two things, well attended to. So thanks very much for sharing that. It does sort of reinforce a lot of the things that we hear and see out there. All right, Ruben, back to you.
Okay. It's quite interesting how across the board you get to pick up a sense of what's going on in everyone's mind in their business. And there seems to be trends which kind of feature depending on the economic cycle. So it's great to see how it's all come together. So if you had more profit and cash being generated by your business, what would that give you personally? It's quite easy to say, right, we'll just do this for the business, but personally, what would that give you? It's probably worthwhile just sharing your thoughts in the chat. See what people have on their minds. If you made more profit and more cash, what would that give you personally? More dividend. Yep. Peace of mind. Absolutely. Security and a means to scale quicker. You've got the investment, you can go with it. Greater certainty in the business investment possibility. Absolutely. You can plow some more in. More sleep. I like that. Yeah. Peaceful sleep at night. Travel, quality of life. A lot of people go into business thinking that's going to happen. Security and choice. Yeah, totally. Because that just gives you that ability to decide what you want to do. Decision agility for capex and investment. Wow, that's pretty awesome. What we found with some of the business owners we've talked to is they're looking for more time as an owner for strategic thinking because they get so absorbed in their business, there and there, in operational, and that strategic thinking is just left to the side because that's something we'll do on a Saturday afternoon. Never happens. More time for personal life. It's a lot of reasons people leave corporate life or start a business because they're looking for that work-life balance, and sometimes the business absorbs them so much that they forget why they did that. More freedom, flexibility, totally, and financial security. So a lot of these were touched upon within your responses. Really, really critical that this is kept top of mind. It's not just about having a successful business, but what is it going to give you as the owner, as the shareholder? And if you want to grow your business, what's the first thing business owners tend to do? And when we ask this question, a lot of the times the answer is we'll increase sales because we want to grow our business, we'll increase sales. And some say marketing as their first port of call. And obviously that reason, it's an obvious choice for that to happen. It makes sense, doesn't it? However, if you're using just increase in sales and revenue as a way to grow your business, is there a problem with that? There is. And the reason is using sales as the only strategy to grow your business. It ignores the reality of a business, which is that sales are only one part of the puzzle. There are in fact 7 levers you can use to grow your business and to get what you want out of the business. And 6 of them often get ignored. David, over to you.
Thanks, Ruben. So, what levers do we have at our disposal as business owners to tweak and pull that can positively impact cash, profit, and business value? Well, that's the big question. And I guess that's why we're here today to learn more about that. So The answer being, first and foremost, as Rupert just alluded to, is sales volume. That is definitely one of the levers, and we're not saying that you should ignore that by any means. I guess we're just saying that just having a sole focus on growing your top line or your revenue line actually limits your ability to fully crystallise all those efforts that you put into doing exactly that. And we've seen a lot of businesses at the CFO Centre, a lot of clients and other businesses fall to their knees from growing their top line too fast, sucking the cash out of their business. So it's more about how much of every extra dollar of sales actually turns into cash into your bank account, and when does it fall into your bank account? And part of it is asking yourself, are you attracting at the moment the right type of customers in the first place? More about that a bit later. So there's 6 forgotten levers. First one is around pricing. And your first reaction might be, oh, I can't put up my prices. I won't be competitive. So I guess the rhetorical question is, do you know what your competitors, your true competitors, are charging? Do you have a unique selling proposition, and are you communicating that, and real clarity about where you want to position your business in the marketplace? Then your pricing strategy needs to fall in underneath that. And what we'll see today in a real life case study is that even a 1% increase in your pricing can have a huge impact, positive impact on your business, and you won't lose lots and lots of customers at the same time. So part of it is to review your product or service lines. Which ones are making a profit, which ones aren't? Quite often what you'll see is a headline number on your P&L, on your profit and loss statement, but not know underneath what the true story is. And part of that can then lead to a decision around pricing. The next of the levers is your cost of goods sold, or your direct costs, and reducing those in proportion to revenue, so in percentage terms. This can be achieved by looking at your suppliers, your key suppliers, and renegotiating better terms, better pricing, or looking at alternative suppliers. And this has become really important, more so now than ever, with cost pressures across the board, everything from things that were impacted by COVID, whether it was timber, for instance, computer chips in electronics, through to at the moment, the impact the floods have been having on things like grocery prices. It's all flowing through. So looking at your suppliers that service your business, but whether it's around bulk purchase discounts, early payment discounts, looking at better freight terms, or looking at how you even manage your foreign exchange, your FX, with imports, if that's relevant to your business. The next is around your overheads, again, in proportion to revenue in percentage terms. And that really involves looking at things line by line within your P&L, your different cost lines. If you've got a big proportion of your overheads is wages in terms of back office staff, then it's what are your staff doing? Is there a lot of manual manipulation of data? Are there inefficient processes in place? Are your systems, not talking to each other? If you can actually get efficiency gains from your systems and your processes, then you obviously need less staff, or those staff can be redeployed into more value-adding activity for you. Other line-by-line, analysis, which we've done for clients, which have really generated great results in terms of cost savings, has been in things like insurance, energy and utilities, communications, freight, and advertising and marketing. The next of the levers is reduction in debtor days or accounts receivable. If you're not sure what I mean by debtor days, that's the average number of days it's taking to for an invoice, a sales invoice, to translate into cash into your bank account. So how long it's taking, it's a good measure of how long it's taking on average to actually get paid. So this one's all about getting your customers to pay you faster. So what terms are you currently offering? Do you have a good collection process in place and somebody internally to make the phone call to collect the overdues at the right time? And what credit are you giving new customers? Are you doing any sort of credit control checks in the first instance? And then if you've got historical slow and bad payers in your customer base, what terms are you offering them? The next is around reduction in stock days or work in progress, depending on what type of business you are. Stock days is again, it's the average number of days, in this case, from stock that you've purchased sitting on your factory floor to turning into actual sales being used in your sales process. So reducing the amount of stock or inventory you hold or work in progress, it's a massive lever for those businesses that have it. I'm amazed at how many businesses over the years didn't have stock takes being performed at least annually. So really no idea of what they actually had and whether it was actually reflective of what was on their balance sheet. Stock takes will uncover exactly what slow moving or obsolete items you've got as well, and how then a plan needs to be put in place as to how to clear that obsolete or slow moving stock. It could also uncover some poor purchasing behaviour within your organisation, people purchasing too much of the wrong type of stuff. And then number 7 is increasing creditor days. Creditor days is the time between when you've actually bought something from a supplier and been invoiced to when you actually pay them. So taking a little longer to pay suppliers can actually help. We're not saying you should do that to the point where you're hurting the relationship, obviously, or getting cut off in terms of supply. Perhaps there's some scope to renegotiate terms with your suppliers or find alternative suppliers, or even just pay them slightly later than usual without hurting the relationship. So the last 3 of those, debtor days, stock days, and creditor days, are what we collectively call working capital. That's the engine, lifeblood of your business, which they all squarely sit on your balance sheet, and they can have a huge impact on cash flow and also therefore on your funding requirements now and in the future. Any quick questions you want to fire into the chat box now or as we go, and we'll get to those questions as they pop up. I'll be very happy to answer them on the go. There'll also be an opportunity to ask questions at the end as well. We'll look at more of the practical application of these 7 levers shortly, but in the meantime, I'll hand it back to Rupen.
Thanks, David. A lot of these things mentioned here, they seem pretty basic, but I can tell you something. When I was CFO at British Airways, all these were looked at, and at that time was a $35 billion sterling business, or 35 billion sterling business. And it's these things which kept the bottom line and the shareholders happy. Really, really critical. So what does it look like in terms of the practical application of these? So here's one of our clients. Obviously, we've changed the name, and I'll take you through this and see how these little tweaks in the levers make such a big impact. So if we just look on the top right-hand side, you'll see operating profit of 4.6 million and a net cash flow of negative 3.2 million to generate that operating profit of 4.6. So on the face of it, you think, wow, nearly $5 million profit, but we're burning 3.2 million worth of cash to do that. And this is when we got referred into this client to, they weren't on their knees totally, but they said, look, you guys need to just go in and figure a few things out. And this is the kind of things they had done internally. A little bit like what we spoke in earlier on in this session, where how do you grow a business? Increase sales volume. So these guys had done that, and they increased sales volume by 15%, nearly 2 million extra operating profit, but burning an extra 650,000 of cash flow. That's the negative impact. And they'd also gotten reduced in terms of the overhead to support that extra sales. The overhead had gone up 10%. So 840,000 negative impact on operating profit, as well as cash flow being negative. And to achieve those extra sales, they'd offered people slightly better terms and just let it roll a little bit, so people weren't paying them as quickly. So debtor days had blown out by another 5 days, which is over 500,000 negative impact on cash flow, because that's the money being held in someone else's bank instead of theirs. And the overall impact of doing all of that, they'd increased their bottom line by 1 million. However, the impact on the cash flow was negative too, not sustainable. You might be able to do this for a few months, maybe maximum 6 or 8 months, and after that, you're on your knees. So we then went in, and the things we did, these things didn't happen overnight. It was a 12 to 18 month kind of journey, helping this particular business to get back to where it should. So we looked at price increase, right? And obviously not across the board, because it's not sustainable everywhere in every product or service, depending on where the market is, where you're positioned at. That increase in price led to a 2.1 million increase in operating profit and a 1.6 million positive impact on the cash flow. And we carried on. We looked at, okay, so that increase in price did cause a small reduction in volume, which they knew that would happen. We'd explained to them. That created a negative 130,000 to the bottom line, but it released some cash. Not a big number, but 43,000 less cash was tied up because there was less sales by that much. Then we looked at the overhead line, a little bit like what David was saying, where prices creep up. If we're putting up our prices, all our suppliers might have done the same. So we started looking line by line through that, and across the board got to a 2% reduction in overheads, which led to 168,000 positive impact on operating profit and cash flow as well. And then we looked at accounts receivable. They'd blown out. Normal 30 days had gone up to 60, 75 days. And just the ones we could, we started reeling them in over that period. Bring it back, not to the 30 days where it should be. That's a longer term journey. But just by 15 days across the board over that period, 1.7 million extra sitting in our bank than someone else's. And then we looked at the how quickly we were paying our suppliers. And again, like David said, not to damage these relationships. Across the board, averaging out, it was 2 days extra. So some a little bit more, some we couldn't. And that created another 158,000 positive impact on net cash flow. So what did that do to the bottom line? Profit went up by 2 million at operating profit level. And the cash impact on the business was 3.7 million positive, a big turnaround to where it was before. And if we look at the impact this had on the value of the business, so when we kicked off as one of our clients, when we valued the business, it was negative. No one would pay money for a negative cash flow business because it's not going to do anything for them. Just by making these small tweaks, in a period of 18 months, the value of the business improved by over 10 million. And these are just small tweaks. Didn't have to do, there wasn't big magic or anything, but that's what the power of this is, if you know how to do it. David.
Thanks, Rupert. That's fantastic. Even if those numbers look massive to you compared to maybe what your business is right now, it's about the relative improvement that these things can actually have on your business. So, unless I guess you commit to taking some action with what you're learning today, this session is going to be remembered as, maybe an interesting one at the most, or maybe even as entertaining, but not as wisdom, because as we all do, and I'm as guilty as anyone, you can log out after this and then get lost in your day-to-day again, and then it all gets forgotten. So what we're really keen to do is to help you develop an action plan, and I'm going to give you an example of what a simple action plan could actually look like, so that you can go away and start implementing some of this stuff immediately. And the great thing is you can go at your own speed and pick one that you believe needs the most attention first before moving on to the others. Perhaps, if you've got the 6 forgotten levers that all require some attention because they haven't been looked at before, then you might even choose one lever every month for the next 6 months, in addition to sales volume, which you may already be working on. Then again, perhaps some of these levers aren't completely relevant to your business, like cost of goods sold and inventory. If that's the case, your action plan could be a shorter list of things to do, or you might actually have some of these levers which you think you've already been working on. Again, might be a shorter list for you. I guess regardless, it's about having a look at your internal capabilities. And what I mean by that is looking at both yourself and the staff that you've got, especially within the finance and operational space. Have I got the right people to get a plan together with me and to execute this plan successfully? If the answer hand on heart is no, then perhaps you need to look at getting an expert in to help make it a reality, like one of our part-time CFOs, for instance. Part of this includes making sure that you've got KPIs relevant to your business in place. And as a minimum, in terms of what we're talking about today, it needs to include KPIs like debtor days, stock days, creditor days, as well as around margins as a minimum. Having those in place, excuse me, and then being able to record them every month accurately so you can actually track your progress. So yeah, to help bring this alive, I just thought I'd bring up an example of a simple action plan. Apologies if it looks like a very busy screen, for which it is. But as I say, it's simple. What it does, it sort of mirrors or depicts, I should say, what a business could look like now in terms of the current position, what the goal is for that business by a certain date, what they'd like to achieve, and then what the actions to take are to make that a reality, and doing that for each of the 7 levers. So if you take pricing first, and you saw from Rupen's case study what a massive impact a 5% price increase had on that particular business. So even if it was 1 or 2%, you're starting to get a feel for the impact that it can have, because it drops to your bottom line and into your bank account. Unlike volume, sales volume, which comes at a cost, because for every extra dollar of revenue, there's a cost associated and a time investment into delivering that extra dollar of revenue. So with pricing now, I said, well, the current position could be that you don't really have a firm pricing strategy. It's inconsistent. You might allow your sales staff to discount. You might be unsure of what sales are actually making you a profit and which ones are actually unprofitable to your business. So if that's the case, the goal by a certain date might be that all product lines, all service lines are going to be profitable with pricing reflective of the market position that we're taking. So for that to happen, then there needs to be some profit analysis by product or service line, so you can figure out at the moment which ones are making you money, which ones might be only breaking even, and which ones are actually unprofitable from which then you need to make some pretty firm decisions. Those ones that are losing you money or even breaking even, you need to figure out, can I put the prices up in this marketplace? If not, can I make or deliver the product or service more efficiently? And if not, then it's you need to have a real strategic reason as to why you would keep it. So it's also looking at where you want to play in your market, what position you want to take, and then your pricing should support that. In terms of sales volume, you can obviously measure what your sales or turnover is right now and where you'd like it to be. I think it's also, though, I've got on this action plan, it's really good to know what your customer base looks like now and what maybe your bottom, I've called it your bottom 10% of your customers might look like. And what I mean by that is actually doing a bit of an audit of your customer base against some sort of set criteria to see who your problem customers are. What I mean by that is which ones beat you down on price, which ones are difficult to deal with, and which ones pay you late all the time. Because you might actually, when you do an audit, figure out that those customers are not only paying you late, but because they're beating you down on price, they're not actually making you money. And sometimes less is more. You might actually cull some customers if that's the case, which will have an immediate impact on your bottom line and your cash flow. And even if your turnover number drops in the short term, it's actually making you a stronger business for the longer term. And then you can start actually chasing the right type of customers and the right type of orders. Those that actually appreciate your selling proposition. And then making sure you've got a marketing plan that actually helps you find your ideal customers. Which channels are you going to use to find those customers? Reducing cost of goods sold. Knowing what your gross margins are now and what you'd like them to be. And then looking at, I've called it here, your top 5 suppliers, but it might be more or less than that, against alternative suppliers and renegotiating better pricing where you can. Again, like I said, it might be around some discounts on bulk, on buying in bulk, but looking at minimum orders, making sure you don't get penalised there, looking at freight terms, that all adds up. With overheads as a percentage of revenue, what they are now and where you think you'd like them to be by a certain date. And then I've said here, why not review your top 3 cost lines against alternative providers? We've had some great results in going out and looking at getting insurance premiums retendered. We've had great results in going to energy providers, including the incumbent energy provider, for our clients and just getting immediate savings there. As I said earlier, looking at your wages within your back office as well. And then in terms of your marketing spend, do you measure your return that you're getting on your marketing spend and measuring it by channel? So what's the cost of acquisition to acquire a new customer by channel? So which channels are actually working for you, which ones aren't? In terms of reducing debtor days, so measuring it now and also measuring what percentage of your accounts receivable ledger is currently at over 60 days, for instance, and then putting some goals in place in terms of debtor days and the amount sitting in over 60 days. It's amazing how many, when we start measuring debtor days for clients, they've got 30-day, they're offering, say, 30-day terms, and their debtor days are at 60 or 70. So double what their terms are. That can burn a huge hole in your bank account. So introducing a new collection process and having somebody trained to handle the collection calls. There's this sort of almost irrational fear with some people that if I pick up the phone and ask a customer to settle an overdue invoice, that you're going to lose that customer. It's not the case. And if it is the case, they're the wrong customer. reducing stock days, again, measuring where you are now and where you'd like to be, introducing stock takes if they're not already in place with a written stock take procedure, and having key staff identified of who are actually going to conduct those stock takes. Then once you've got visibility over obsolete or slow moving stock, having a plan to convert that into cash. You might have to discount that stock just to get it converted into cash. Otherwise, it's burning a hole on your shop floor. And in terms of creditor days, again, knowing where you are and where you'd like to be with that, maybe renegotiating terms of your current creditors, reducing the terms that they've got you on, or looking at alternatives, again, without damaging relationships. John on the calls asked in the chat box, any thoughts regarding the impact of COVID in the supply chain? Well, we've seen a huge impact for a lot of our clients over the last 2 years with respect to COVID and the impact it's had on supply chain. I think pretty much any business out there has had some sort of impact on it. Things are slowly on the improve, but you know, especially businesses like we've got clients, say, in construction, trying to get their hands on, say, timber, for instance, and the flow-on effects that's had. John's asked here about what's happened to chips in the car industry. Well, we all know that's had a real impact on the availability of new cars, but I'm not exactly sure, to be honest, where that's up to now, whether that's improved or not. But yeah, it's had a massive impact, and it can. One thing it's thrown up is the need to really look at your supply chain right down the line, because it's shown people have been exposed by not knowing exactly where some of the components they've needed, for instance, have actually ultimately come from, and then not having a plan in terms of alternative suppliers if something was to happen. You know, the big risk in this area of the world beyond COVID and what's happening in Ukraine is if China gets serious with Taiwan, and if you're currently relying on components or stock from Taiwan or that region of the world, what happens if there is a conflict? So these things are certainly now being thrown up. And as John's got in the chat box, we do a lot of what if modelling around that and around a whole lot of other parts of your business where there's risk or potential risk. What if there is a conflict there? What happens? What are you going to do? So yeah, great comments from John there. So that's the action plan. We've got a question here. In terms of an action plan, how would you know what to work on first? Well, that's a massive question. I think that's where you need to get advice if you're not sure, because we all want to work on what's biggest bang for buck, right? So two levers that jump out to me, regardless of what business you're in, is around that pricing lever and also around your debtor days. I guess it comes down to, where are you feeling the hurt, or where do you see the most improvement? If you've got, like in that case study, if you're making a profit but you're suffering cash flow shortages, then you'd be wanting to start, I believe, with levers that have the biggest impact on cash flow. So, and that's where getting some advice can also help you make sure that you're focusing on the things that really matter. But, you know, rather than just selling more and thinking that that's going to help your cash flow, that could take a long time, if ever, to actually eventuate. So, you know, for me, if you've got cash flow problems, I'd be looking at your pricing, making sure you've done the analysis over your product and service streams, looking at your debtor days, and looking at your overhead spend. So I know we've come up to time, so just very quickly, you know, now that you know what we mean by magic numbers and how impactful they can be on profit and cash flow, we wanted to offer this interactive session with one of our experienced CFOs that would actually cover your own magic numbers. So, you know, if you'd like to know what your own numbers would look like, what specific levers would benefit your business, then please go ahead and scan the QR code that you can see on the screen right now. That'll allow us to trap some details so we can get back in touch. There's no cost, there's no obligation of this. It's just our way of saying, you know, thank you for attending today. And we think you can get some real, you know, great benefit out of it. Also, there's a link that's just been put in the chat box as well, if you'd prefer to use that rather than the QR code. It would allow you to devise your own action plan and turn this theory, you know, into practical application. So any further questions? Please fire away in the chat box now if any questions pop up for you.
David, I think you covered the detail really well in terms of how this can be practically used, because it's quite easy to come up with theories and say, you just go and do that. But you've gone in granular and given the magic numbers. So I think it's given people a good feel.
Yeah, that's certainly we certainly hope so. It's all about practical information that you can take away and put into your business. So no, thanks very much, everyone. Really appreciate everyone popping on today. There's that QR code again if you just want to scan that. And we certainly do look forward to helping you run your own magic numbers very soon.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us today. And if there's any further information, we're a very giving business. There's a lot given. It's not just about, yeah, just engage us. It's less of that. It's about, okay, where can we help you? And then we've got a team all across, like I said, Australia, New Zealand, and also connections with our global team. So there may be supply chain things going on in other countries or any other kind of intel you need from your industry in some of the other countries we operate in, and we're here to help as well. Great to see you all.
Thanks, everyone. All the best.